My first guest tonight is following developments in the war very closely. He's the Russian author and journalist Mikhail Zygar. Now in exile, he's also the founding editor of the independent television station TV Rain. Resistance against Putin takes many forms, and we spoke here in the studio about why going public with his own gay marriage was an act of protest. Mikhail Zygar, welcome back to the program.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So, we're going to start with your own personal story. And of course, you did tweet a while ago. You said, it's been a stressful time. Oh, and I also got married. And you show a picture of yourself and your husband. So you are publicly declaring to the world and
Yes.
to your nation, and we'll get into why, that you're gay. Was it a difficult decision to make to do it this way?
No, and as I wrote it, we need to start liberation from ourselves. Now, for any Russian, especially for those Russians who have left the country because we are protesting and fighting against the war and against Putin's regime, it's very important to do whatever we can to liberate ourselves and to liberate Russia of the future. So for me, that was very logic line.
It almost sounds like it was political.
It was in a way because after the war, after Putin declared the full-scale war against Ukrainian people and against the world, I feel that we cannot accept the current Russian state. We cannot consider it to be a legitimate state. We cannot accept all those new crazy laws they are voting for. So there is no Russian state for us. So we, the Russian society, have the obligation to create the new laws for the future Russia. We have to create the new precedents. And that was my actually toast during my wedding, that today we declare the same-sex marriages legal in Russia.
Okay, so let's just
we as Russian society.
We as Russian society, or you and your husband, and maybe some in Russian society. So let's just so that everybody understands. Basically, Putin has outlawed being gay. I mean, he said in his previous times that there mustn't be any, what did he say, propaganda, unduly influencing young people, i.e. teachers. Nobody's allowed to talk about homosexuality.
We have so-called anti-gay law or law prohibiting gay propaganda since 2013. And now they are creating the new law that outlaws everything. And it's going to be finalized and signed by Putin by the end of this year.
And what does that mean, that outlaws everything? What does this law actually mean in practice?
You cannot mention... It says that you cannot popularize the perspective of being gay or the perspective of changing your sex. So actually, any example, any positive example, any description of romantic same-sex relationship is outlawed because that's propaganda.
Any picture, any normalization.
Normalization. That's the worst thing for them because they. For them, like having enemies for that kind of society that Russia is now, having enemies you can fight with is a very important thing. So, so that law is at the same time they are creating the enemy for the very conservative part of Russian population. Also, that's leverage on Russian civil society, on the cultural figures. They think that would be popular and that could help them to get rid of the remainings of the civil society that is still in Russia and that is still trying to be vocal.
How do you interpret Putin not going to the G20 plus? As of this moment, he has not spoken or really been seen publicly since the fall of Kherson, liberation, as the Ukrainians would say.
That's a very important question. I don't think that he will ever leave Russia. Because now he has obviously close to the edge. He is considered to be loser by most of his inner circle. And so
his inner circle.
Yes, it's obvious that he has lost. When he was delivering his victorious speech, recognizing all those new
When he annexed them all.
oblasts,
Yeah. Yeah.
of Ukraine, we saw those faces in the audience. They were not happy. They were really miserable. All the members of Politburo, all the ministers, all the FSB generals, they were faceless. Like they already understand that there is no future for them. There is no future for Putin's Russia, and he is really close to his defeat. They cannot.
You really think
they
that?
Cannot,
You really think that? Because
they understand that.
really,
Definitely.
and so how would that look?
They still pretend that they are loyal. They still know the rules. They are still afraid of him, like the inner circle of Stalin was afraid of him. But he's not Stalin. He's much more like Hitler now. They know that he's losing. They know that he used to be considered the lucky bastard. He used to be. They thought that no matter what he does, he's always more experienced than the Western leaders. He is winning anyway. Now they know that he's not. His era is over. So and he knows probably that if he leaves Russia, there is a possibility he will not return. So he's staying in his bunker. He's keeping all of his friends and close ones, close assistants, generals, very, very close to him, and he's watching them all, and he's very cautious about the alliances, about the people, what people say, and what people talk about him.
I wonder if what you're saying applies to people, you know, the dark faces and the ashen faces of his Politburo and his generals. So, as you know, Putin deployed his top battlefield commander to announce the Kherson move. And this is a tweet from BBC Russia saying, the announcement that Russia will retreat from Kherson was a piece of TV theater. General Surovikin reporting to Defense Minister Shoigu, who then gave the order. The one actor absent from the stage was Vladimir Putin, the Kremlin clearly anxious to distance him from this setback.
100%. Everyone knows that he is running the game, that no decision can be taken without him. It's him who is having all the maps and who is drawing all the lines and who is taking all the decisions, but he doesn't want to take the responsibility. So he wants Surovikin and Shoigu to look like they are to blame. He can fool the people, but he cannot now fool the elite. And the elite,
is really interesting.
He is close to the moment when the elite understands that tomorrow will be worse.
So one of the things that troubles me and has troubled the world and is Putin's sort of raising the nuclear threat and then saying no to the nuclear threat. As you know, several times he's obliquely threatened it, and then he says, no, this is neither militarily nor politically, useful to us. We would never use a tactical nuke. You wrote, though, in a recent column, which was titled, "The Russians have already become accustomed to the bomb," which frankly shocks me. You wrote, Russians, Ukrainians, and Europeans have come a long way in their stance on nuclear war. At first there was panic, then came the denial of danger, and finally the horror of the idea that it could come to this. Now there is fatalistic indifference. Do you really think that people are fatalistic about something as appalling and existential as that?
I had that feeling. I think that it's somehow it's different. So somehow after the beginning of this war, definitely the mood in Ukraine is very different. The Ukrainians are joking about this. Very funny jokes about the orgy that is going to happen if there is a nuclear attack. Russians, I think that Russians are mostly depressed and horrified. Yeah. And when people are so depressed, when they have nothing to lose, they can think, okay, the atomic bomb is the answer. But now after Kherson, I think that something has changed. And to my mind, the probability of that disaster is much less.
Yes.
Because now Putin cannot be sure that his lieutenants
will support him.
would
actually fulfill the order.
his order. Yes, and he knows that. He knows that he cannot order, and he cannot press the button because he doesn't know if the generals want to die.
Incredible.
For him.
Mikhail Zygar, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Really
Christian.
fascinating.